The colony was silent. Once, this place had been full of life, with families, laughter, and voices rising in the air. Now only the wind moved through the empty streets. Dust rolled across broken roads, carrying the smell of burned stone and metal. The houses that had once been homes stood dark, their windows shattered, their walls cracked. Myra walked slowly through the ruins. Her steps were quiet, but in her heart fear beat loudly. She had been moving from one broken building to another for hours, searching for something she could use: food, water, maybe even medicine. The attack had ended days ago, but its shadow was still here. She could almost hear the machines in the distance, their metal bodies shining, their red eyes glowing as they searched for survivors. She carried a small bag on her shoulder. Inside were a few dried roots and a bottle of half-filled water. It was not much, but it was all she had. She was young, not more than 20, and she had never thought she would be alone in such a place. Yet here she was, walking among ruins, holding on to a small hope that she might still find someone alive. Then she saw it. At first, she thought it was only a blanket lying in the corner of a destroyed shelter. The roof of the shelter had collapsed, and broken wood and stone were piled up around it. The blanket moved slightly. Myra froze. Her first thought was that it could be the wind. But then, she heard a sound: a weak cough, faint but real. Her heart leapt. Someone was alive. She rushed forward, pushing away broken pieces of wood. Under the blanket lay a man. His face was pale, his lips dry. His eyes opened slowly when he felt her presence. For a moment he looked confused, as if he did not believe she was really there. "You are alive," Myra whispered, kneeling beside him. The man tried to speak, but his voice was broken. His body was trembling beneath the blanket. Myra saw that his arms were thin, and his hands shook when he tried to lift them. He was weak, so weak that even breathing looked painful. "Do not move," she said softly. "Save your strength." She gave him water from her bottle, lifting his head carefully. He drank only a little before coughing again. Myra's heart tightened. This man was a soldier. She could see it in the worn armor lying beside him, scratched and burned from battle. His nameplate was gone, but the shape of his suit told her who he was: one of the defenders of the colony. She remembered seeing soldiers fighting when the machines attacked. They had stood between the people and the enemy, buying time for families to escape. Many of them had fallen, and Myra had thought all of them were gone. But this one had survived. "My name is Myra," she said, trying to give him comfort. "I will help you." The man closed his eyes for a moment. Then, with great effort, he spoke a single word. "Aaron." So that was his name. Myra stayed beside him, watching over him. The day grew darker as the sun dipped low. She knew she could not carry him far. His body betrayed him each time he tried to move. Beneath the blanket, his strength was slipping away. But she could not leave him here to die. She began to clean the space around them, removing sharp stones and broken wood. She found a small corner where the wind did not reach, and there she laid him gently. She searched the nearby ruins for anything useful. In the remains of an old house, she found a few cloth strips that she could use to bind his wounds. In another corner, she discovered a small pot that could hold water. Each little thing gave her more hope. As the night came, Myra sat close to Aaron. His breathing was uneven, but he was still alive. She thought about leaving, about running to find safety, but her heart refused. She remembered how the soldiers had stood firm even when they knew they could not win. She could not abandon one of them now. The stars appeared above the ruins, cold and distant. Myra listened to the silence of the colony. Somewhere out there, machines were still hunting. But here, in this broken shelter, there was still life. She looked at Aaron, who was drifting into uneasy sleep. She whispered quietly, as if to herself, "I will care for you. No matter what comes, I will not let you be alone." And so the night passed. The ruins were silent, but in the silence there was something new, a promise, made by a young woman to a fallen soldier. A promise that even in the darkest times, humans would not turn away from one another. Morning came slowly over the ruins of the colony. The first light of the sun touched the broken walls and burned streets, turning them gold for a moment before the dust swallowed their glow again. Myra opened her eyes and felt the cold air against her face. She had not slept much during the night. Every time Aaron coughed or moved, she woke at once to check if he was still breathing. Now, in the morning light, she saw him more clearly. His face was pale, almost gray. His body was thin under the blanket, his arms marked with deep bruises. He tried to shift, but the effort made him groan softly. Myra rushed to his side. "You must not move," she said, her voice gentle but firm. Aaron opened his eyes. They were dark, filled with both pain and stubborn strength. "I must stand," he whispered. His lips were dry, his throat cracked. Myra shook her head. "You cannot. Your body is not ready." Aaron tried again, pushing his hands against the ground, but his arms shook violently. His body betrayed him, and he fell back, the blanket slipping from his chest. His breathing turned heavy. Myra quickly covered him again and held his hand to calm him. "You see," she said softly. "Even a soldier cannot fight with no strength." For a moment, he closed his eyes. Myra thought he might drift into unconsciousness, but then he spoke, his voice quiet and slow. "I was trained, never to give up. Even if the body fails, the mind must not." His words carried weight, though they came from weak lips. Myra felt them settle in her heart. She saw the truth in him. His body had betrayed him, but his spirit was strong, burning even now when he lay broken beneath the blanket. Myra helped him drink more water, though only a few drops passed his lips before he coughed. She wiped his mouth gently with a cloth. Then she offered him a piece of dried root from her bag. He chewed with difficulty but managed to swallow. All the while, Myra's mind worked quickly. She knew they could not remain here forever. Enemy machines still searched for survivors. At any moment, they could come across this shelter. Aaron could not run, and she would not leave him. That meant she had to find a way to keep them hidden, to keep him alive long enough for his strength to return. "I will look for more food," Myra told him. "And maybe something to help with the pain." Aaron nodded weakly. His eyes met hers for a long moment. In them, Myra saw both gratitude and worry. He did not trust his body, but he trusted her. Leaving him was not easy. She stepped outside, careful to move silently through the broken streets. She searched the remains of nearby houses. Most were empty, burned by fire. In one, she found a rusted tin with grains inside, enough for a few meals. In another, hidden under a fallen beam, she discovered a small medical kit. The box was dented, but inside were bandages and a vial of old but usable medicine. When she returned to the shelter, Aaron was awake. His eyes lifted when he saw her, and though his lips did not smile, there was relief in his gaze. Myra showed him the food and the medicine. She cleaned his wounds with gentle hands, wrapping them with fresh bandages. Aaron did not complain, though his jaw tightened with each touch. "You have courage," he whispered. Myra shook her head. "I only do what anyone should." "No," Aaron said, his voice thin but steady. "Many would run. Many would save only themselves. You stay." His words made her silent. She did not know how to answer. She only looked at him, then lowered her eyes. That evening, Myra built a small fire with broken wood, careful to keep the smoke low. She cooked the grains into a weak soup. Aaron drank slowly, his hands trembling, but it gave him strength. After, he rested again, his body sinking deeper into the blanket. Outside, the wind carried distant sounds. Myra froze as she heard them metal steps, heavy and sharp, moving across the ruins. She quickly put out the fire and pressed herself close to the wall. The sound grew louder for a moment, then faded away into the distance. Still, fear stayed in her chest. The enemy was near. When she looked back, she saw Aaron watching her. Though he could barely move, his eyes were calm. "Do not fear," he said softly. "Machines may be strong, but they do not understand humans. They cannot." Myra listened to his words. There was something powerful in them, something that pushed away her fear. She realized then that his value was not only in his body. Even if his strength was gone, his mind, his spirit, his experience, they were weapons of their own. That night, as he slept, Myra sat beside him. She remembered her promise from the night before. She would not leave him. His body may have failed, but she believed his spirit could still guide them both through the darkness. The ruins around them were empty, but inside the small shelter, something still lived: hope. And Myra decided she would protect it, no matter how heavy the burden became. The days in the ruined colony moved slowly. Each morning, Myra woke to the sound of Aaron's uneven breathing. She always feared that one day the sound would stop, but each time, she found him alive. His body was still weak, but his eyes carried a fire that gave her courage. That morning, as she stepped outside to gather water, she noticed something unusual. In the distance, across the broken street, there were tracks on the ground. They were not from people. The lines were too straight, too heavy, pressed deep into the dirt. Myra's heart tightened. She had seen such tracks before. They belonged to the machines. She hurried back to the shelter. Aaron was awake, trying to adjust himself beneath the blanket. His face was pale, but when he saw her, he read her fear at once. "What is it?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "They are close," Myra whispered. "The machines. I saw their tracks." Aaron closed his eyes for a moment, then nodded. It was only a matter of time. His hand trembled as he tried to sit up, but his body refused him. Myra quickly helped him lean against the wall. "They will come again and again," Aaron said slowly. "They do not leave until every survivor is gone. That is how they work." Myra's breath grew heavy. She wanted to believe they could stay hidden, but she knew he was right. The machines were patient hunters. They never gave up. "What should we do?" she asked. Aaron's eyes narrowed. "We prepare." He pointed toward the door of the shelter. "This place is not strong. But the ruins can help us. The machines are clever with numbers, but they do not understand traps the way humans do." Myra frowned. "Traps?" "Yes," Aaron said, coughing before he could continue. "I will show you." Even if my body fails, my mind still remembers. And so, throughout the day, Aaron explained. He spoke of how soldiers once fought the machines. They never had equal numbers. They never had equal weapons. But they had creativity, and that made them dangerous. Humans used shadows, broken walls, sound, and even silence as weapons. Myra listened carefully. When he told her to move stones to block one path, she did. When he asked her to place broken glass across another, she obeyed. She could see the picture forming. They were turning the ruins into a small defense. Aaron could not lift more than a stone, but his eyes followed her every movement, guiding her step by step. By evening, they had shaped the shelter into something more than a hiding place. If the machines came, they would not find easy prey. That night, when the stars returned, Myra sat beside Aaron. He was tired from speaking so much, his breath shallow. She gave him water, then whispered, "You sound as if you have done this before." Aaron's eyes opened slightly. "I have. I was not always lying beneath a blanket. Once, I led others in battles. We lost many, but sometimes we won. We learned how to make the enemy fear us." Myra tilted her head. "Machines do not feel fear." Aaron gave a weak smile. "They do not feel it, but they can still know it. When their plans fail, when their numbers fall, when humans rise again and again, they begin to change. They begin to hesitate. And that is where humans win." Myra thought about his words long after he closed his eyes to rest. She looked out into the dark ruins and imagined the machines moving there, silent and cold. Could they really be defeated by human will and tricks? She wanted to believe it. The answer came sooner than she expected. In the deep night, she heard it, the heavy steps of metal feet. Her heart froze. The sound grew louder, echoing through the streets. Myra crawled to the doorway and peered out. Red lights moved in the shadows. Machines, 3 of them, scanning the ruins. Their voices were not voices at all but sharp clicks and static, like broken radios speaking to one another. She hurried back to Aaron, shaking his arm gently. "They are here." His eyes opened at once. Even in weakness, he seemed alert. "Remember what we built," he whispered. "Use the shadows. Move slowly. Let them step where we want." Myra's hands shook, but she nodded. She moved to the first trap, a broken wall ready to fall if pushed at the right moment. The machines moved closer, their red lights sweeping across the ruins. One came near the shelter, scanning with cold precision. Myra held her breath. Aaron's eyes met hers from across the room. He gave the smallest nod. She pushed the stone beam. The wall collapsed with a crash, and dust filled the air. The machine turned sharply toward the noise, stepping exactly where the broken glass lay hidden. Its feet slipped, sparks flying as shards cut into its joints. The second machine rushed to help, moving into the narrow street that Aaron had told her to block. The path was tight, filled with rubble. The machine slowed, trapped between walls, unable to turn quickly. Myra lit a small flame and threw it into the corner where oil had spilled from an old generator. Fire rose suddenly, and the second machine was caught in the blaze. The third machine pulled back, its lights flashing. Myra could see its red eyes turning from one broken ally to the fire. For a moment, it seemed uncertain. Then Aaron, weak but determined, whispered from the shadows, "See? Even machines can learn to hesitate." Myra's fear turned to something else. For the first time, she felt not only hunted, but also capable of fighting back. The shadows outside were no longer only threats, they were tools. And as long as Erin's mind guided her, she believed they still had a chance. The ruins were quiet again, but the silence was no longer the same. Myra sat near the broken wall where one of the machines had fallen. The metal body was still smoking, sparks jumping across its broken wires. The other two machines were gone, one burned, the other retreating into the shadows. For the first time, Myra felt something strange in her heart. It was not fear. It was strength. She looked back at Erin. He lay weak beneath the blanket, his chest rising and falling with effort. Yet his eyes were steady. Even though his body was failing, he had guided her with calm words, teaching her how to fight. "You did well," he whispered when she returned to him. His voice was rough, but filled with pride. "I only followed what you said," Myra answered, setting water beside him. "That is what made it work," Erin said. "Humans survive not by strength alone but by learning, by passing knowledge from one to another. You learned quickly. That is why you are still alive." Myra thought about this as she helped him drink. Each movement he made seemed heavy, as if his muscles no longer obeyed him. His body betrayed him again and again, but his spirit never bent. Myra realized then that what gave her courage was not the traps or the fire, it was the example of Erin's wool. Later that day, Myra searched the ruins for more supplies. She found old wires, pieces of metal, and shattered tools. Carrying them back, she asked Erin what could be done with them. His tired face lit up. "Bring them here," he said. "I will show you." Though his arms shook, Erin guided her hands step by step. He taught her how to tie wires across narrow paths so that machines would trip. He showed her how to sharpen broken metal into spikes that could pierce weak joints. He explained how sound could be used to mislead, how even a small rock thrown at the right time could turn the enemy's focus away. Myra worked with energy she had not known she carried. Each trap they built made her believe more strongly that they had a chance. She began to see the ruins differently. They were no longer only broken walls and shattered homes, they were tools waiting to be used. As the sun lowered, Myra sat beside Erin again. His breathing was rough, but his eyes followed her every move. She felt as if he was not only teaching her how to fight machines but also how to see the world in a new way. "You are still strong, even if your body is not," Myra said softly. Erin gave a faint smile. "Strength is not only in muscles. It is in the will to keep trying, even when the body says it cannot. That is why humans have always endured." His words settled deep in her heart. She realized that this was the lesson he wanted her to carry, not only how to build traps, but how to live with courage. That night, the ruins seemed alive with whispers. The wind carried echoes through the empty streets. Myra stayed awake, her hand resting on a piece of broken metal shaped into a blade. Erin dozed beside her, his face pale in the starlight. At one point, she heard the faint sound of metal feet again, but this time her fear did not control her. Instead, she remembered Erin's lessons. She knew where the traps were placed. She knew how to move silently through the shadows. She no longer felt like prey. The steps faded away, and Myra exhaled. She looked back at Erin and thought of the strange balance between them. His body had failed, but his spirit guided her. Her body was strong, but her spirit drew courage from him. Together, they made something whole. The next morning, Myra decided to test the traps she had built under Erin's instruction. She walked through the ruins, carefully marking each spot in her memory. She triggered a wire trap, watching a heavy beam crash down from above. She triggered another, where sharpened metal pierced the ground with speed. Each time, she thought of how Aaron's mind had created these defenses even while his body could barely move. When she returned to him, her face showed determination. "If they come again, they will not find us easy," she said. Aaron looked at her for a long time, his weak hands resting against the blanket. Then he nodded slowly. "You are learning what it means to be human. It is not the body that makes us different from machines. It is the fire in our spirit, the courage to make something from nothing, the will to fight even when the world tells us we should fall." Myra sat beside him in silence, feeling the weight of his words. She thought about the families who had once lived in this colony, about the soldiers who had stood against the machines, and about her own path. Perhaps humans were not the strongest or the fastest, but there was something in them that could not be measured. That night, as she wrapped the blanket tighter around Aaron to keep him warm, she whispered to herself, "I will not let the fire die." And though the ruins were still dark and filled with danger, Myra felt hope burning brighter than before. She understood now that even if Aaron's body continued to fail, his lessons of fire and spirit would keep guiding her through whatever came next. The ruins were never quiet for long. Myra had learned that every silence carried danger, because behind it there was always movement, machines searching, scanning, hunting. Each day, their red lights passed across the broken streets, and each night their heavy steps echoed like drums in the dark. Myra kept close to Aaron, but she also kept watch. She moved carefully among the ruins, always listening. Aaron's traps had bought them time, but they both knew the machines would not stop. They had no fear, no hunger, no weakness. They would search until nothing living remained. One afternoon, as the sun fell behind the shattered towers, Myra heard them again. The sound was sharper this time, closer. She froze, pressing her body against a fallen wall. Slowly, she peered out. 3 machines moved through the street, their metal bodies gleaming. They carried scanning rods that sent waves of red light across the ground. Myra's heart pounded. They were not only walking, they were searching carefully now, studying every shadow. She slipped back into the shelter, where Aaron lay beneath the blanket. His eyes opened at once when he saw her face. "They are close," Myra whispered. Aaron coughed, his voice rough but steady. "How many?" "3, she answered. "They are searching. Not just walking, searching." Aaron closed his eyes for a moment, then spoke slowly. "That means they are learning. They know survivors are here. We must stay hidden, or strike first." Myra looked at him in fear. "But you cannot fight." His lips curved into the smallest smile. "No. But you can. And I will guide you." Myra's stomach tightened. She did not want to leave him. She did not want to risk herself. But she also knew the machines would find them sooner or later if she did nothing. She nodded silently, gripping the sharp piece of metal she carried as a blade. That night, the machines stayed in the ruins. Myra could hear their clicks and static, their scanning rods humming in the distance. She barely slept, sitting close to Aaron. At times, she thought she saw red lights flash near the shelter, but the traps and rubble kept the machines away. Still, she knew this would not last forever. In the early morning, when the sky was still gray, Myra went out again. She moved silently, remembering every lesson Aaron had taught her. She checked the traps, adjusting wires and stones. She spread broken glass in new places. She worked quickly, for every second outside felt like danger. When she returned, Aaron was awake, his eyes watching the door. "You are faster now," he said softly. "I must be," Myra replied. She sat beside him, helping him drink water. His hands trembled so much that she had to hold the cup for him. "Do not fear the machines," Aaron said, his voice low. "They think strength is only power and numbers. But they do not understand heart. They do not understand why humans fight hardest when hope is almost gone." Myra listened, feeling the weight of his words. She realized that Aaron was preparing her for more than survival. He was teaching her what it meant to carry the will of humans. Even if his body failed, his spirit lived through her. That afternoon, the machines returned again, this time closer than ever. Myra crouched inside the shelter, her breath caught in her chest. She could hear their steps, heavy and slow. One machine stopped near the door, its scanning rod sending red light across the ground. The glow slipped under the cracks of the shelter walls. Aaron's hand touched Myra's arm. His grip was weak, but his eyes were strong. "Wait," he whispered. "Patience is our shield." The machine lingered for a long time. Myra's heart pounded so loudly she thought it would hear. Finally, the steps moved away, fading into the ruins again. Myra exhaled slowly, her hands shaking. "They will come back," Aaron said. "Next time, they will search deeper. You must be ready." Myra nodded, though fear still pressed heavy on her chest. "What if they find us? What if I fail?" Aaron looked at her with steady eyes. "Then you fight. Even if you fall, you make them remember you. That is what humans do. That is why we are never truly defeated." The words struck Myra's heart like fire. She realized then that he did not expect to live long. His body was failing faster each day, his strength slipping away. But he was not afraid for himself. He was afraid for her, and for the promise of humanity still carried in her heart. That night, Myra could not sleep. She sat watching the stars above the ruins, listening to Aaron's uneven breathing beside her. She thought of the machines out there, patient and endless. She thought of her own body, small and fragile compared to their metal forms. But then she remembered Aaron's words. Strength was not only in metal or muscle, it was in spirit. The machines would search again. When they did, she would be ready. She would not let Aaron's courage end with him. She would carry it forward, no matter what came. As dawn touched the broken colony once more, Myra whispered to herself, "I will fight, even when hope is gone." And for the first time, those words felt true. The colony ruins lay under a gray sky, silent but heavy with danger. Myra sat beside Aaron, who looked weaker than ever. His breaths came shallow, his lips dry, and his hands trembled even when still. Yet his eyes remained sharp. It was as if his body was fading, but his spirit refused to surrender. Myra had done all she could: found food, gathered water, repaired traps, but she knew it was not enough. The machines searched closer each day. They would not stop until every shadow was checked, every survivor found. Soon, they would discover the shelter. That morning, Aaron spoke with more strength than she expected. His voice was low but steady. "Myra, the time has come. We cannot keep running or hiding. The machines will find us. When they do, we must strike. We must make a stand." Myra's chest tightened. She looked at him, at the blanket wrapped around his frail body. "But how? You cannot even stand." Aaron gave a faint smile. "Then you will stand for both of us. I will guide you." My body is broken, but my mind is still a weapon. Myra lowered her eyes, her hands curling into fists. The thought of fighting an entire patrol terrified her. But she also knew he was right. They could not wait any longer. "Tell me what to do," she whispered. And so Aaron began to share his plan. He told her how to use the ruins themselves as weapons. The collapsed towers, the broken walls, the spilled oil tanks, each one could be shaped into a trap. He asked her to gather wires, fuel, and stones. He showed her how to position the traps so the machines would walk into them without realizing. "This will not destroy them all," Aaron said, pausing for breath. "But it will slow them. It will remind them that humans are not so easy to erase." Myra listened carefully, memorizing every instruction. She spent the rest of the day working under his guidance. She tied wires across the narrow streets, built piles of heavy stones ready to fall, and poured oil into hidden corners where fire could spread quickly. Her hands ached, her back bent with effort, but she did not stop. Each time she grew tired, she looked back at Aaron. Though his body lay weak under the blanket, his eyes followed her with pride. His voice, though faint, gave her courage. "Good. Place it higher." "Yes, that will hold." "You learn quickly, Myra." By evening, the traps were ready. Myra returned to the shelter, her body trembling from exhaustion. She gave Aaron water, then sat beside him. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The weight of what was coming pressed heavily between them. Finally, Myra asked, "What if we fail?" Aaron's eyes softened. "Then we fail with courage. That is enough. Machines cannot understand that. They think victory is only about living. But for humans, victory is also about how we choose to stand before the end." Myra stared at him, her throat tight. She wanted to protest, to tell him they would both survive, but deep inside she knew he was preparing her for the truth. His body was breaking. Even if they won the next fight, Aaron might not live to see tomorrow. That night, she barely slept. She sat watching him as he drifted in and out of uneasy dreams. His chest rose and fell like a fragile flame struggling against the wind. Myra touched his hand gently. It was cold, but when his eyes opened for a brief moment, she saw warmth in his gaze. "Do not fear," he whispered. "Remember what I taught you. Remember that fire lives in the spirit, not the flesh." The next morning, the sound of machines returned. Heavy steps echoed across the ruins, closer than ever before. Myra's heart pounded, but she stood ready. She looked at Aaron, who nodded slowly. "This is it," he said. "Do as we planned. I will watch, and when the time comes, I will help." Myra left the shelter, moving into the ruined streets. Red lights swept across the broken walls as three machines approached, their metal bodies tall and cold. They moved with purpose, scanning every corner. She waited until the first one stepped into the narrow path. With a quick pull of a rope, she released the stones. They crashed down, striking the machine and pinning it to the ground. Sparks burst from its frame. The second machine turned sharply, moving to attack. Myra lit the oil with a burning cloth. Fire roared to life, spreading fast, cutting off the machine's path. It stumbled back, its sensors blinded by smoke. The third machine raised its weapon, targeting Myra. Fear struck her, but before she could move, a sound came from behind, a loud metallic clang. Aaron, weak and trembling, had managed to strike a broken pipe against the wall, drawing the machine's attention for a moment. That moment was enough. Myra ran, leading the machine into the final trap. A wire caught its leg, pulling it off balance. It fell hard, crashing into the rubble. The street filled with smoke, fire, and broken metal. Myra stood breathing hard, her body shaking. The machines were down. Not destroyed completely, but stopped, at least for now. She rushed back to Aaron. He was lying weakly against the wall, his chest rising slowly. His eyes met hers, filled with both pain and pride. "You did it," he whispered. "We did it." Myra knelt beside him, holding his cold hand. Tears stung her eyes, but she held them back. She would not let him see her despair. Outside, the ruins were silent again, but Myra knew more machines would come. This was not the end. Yet in her heart, she felt something new, courage stronger than fear. She was no longer only a girl hiding in ruins. She was a fighter, carrying the spirit of a soldier whose body had betrayed him but whose will remained unbroken. And when the next battle came, she would not stand alone. She would stand with his spirit beside her. The ruins smelled of smoke and metal. Myra sat beside Aaron, who lay weak under the blanket. His face was pale, his breath shallow, yet his eyes still burned with a quiet fire. The night was cold, and the wind whispered through the broken towers. She knew more machines would return, stronger and faster than before. But for the moment, there was silence. A fragile peace after the storm. Myra looked at Aaron. He had given her courage when she had none. He had taught her how to fight, how to use her fear as strength, and how to see hope even in ruins. Now, she feared losing him more than she feared the machines. "You saved me," she whispered, her hand resting on his. "Without you, I would have given up." Aaron gave a faint smile. "You saved me first, Myra. You cared when I had nothing left. My body failed, but your heart kept me alive." Myra's throat tightened. She wanted to argue, to tell him he would live, but she saw the truth in his eyes. His body was almost gone, yet he had no fear. Instead, he looked proud. That night, she could not sleep. She worked instead, repairing what traps she could, gathering the last bits of food, and keeping the fire alive. Each time she returned to the shelter, Aaron was watching her, silent but present. It was as if he wanted to see every moment, to remember it. At dawn, the sound of machines echoed again. Louder this time. More of them. A full unit, sweeping the ruins. Myra's hands shook, but she tightened her grip on the knife she carried. Aaron called to her softly. "Come here." She knelt beside him, and he placed a weak hand over hers. His voice was low, yet each word was steady. "Myra, listen. You cannot win by force. Not today. You must survive. You must carry the story. If one human lives, the machines have not won." Her eyes filled with tears. "I will not leave you." "You must," Aaron whispered. "I cannot run. My body is finished. But you are strong. You will find others. Promise me." Myra shook her head at first, her heart refusing. But then she saw his gaze calm, steady, unafraid. He had already made peace with his fate. He only wanted her to live. With trembling lips, she whispered, "I promise." Aaron smiled faintly and closed his eyes. The machines came closer, their red lights cutting through the smoke. Myra stood, her body shaking but her spirit burning. She remembered every lesson Aaron had taught her. She knew she could not defeat them all, but she could delay them, confuse them, and escape. When the first machine entered the street, Myra triggered a trap. Stones crashed, fire burst into the air, and smoke filled the ruins. She moved fast, striking and running, leading the machines in circles. She was not fighting to win, she was fighting to buy time. From the shelter, Aaron listened to the battle. Each sound, the crash of stones, the roar of fire, the hiss of sparks, was a sign that Myra was still alive. His body could not move, but in his heart, he felt he was there beside her, fighting with her. Finally, Myra returned, breathless and covered in ash. She rushed to Aaron. "I opened a path," she said quickly. "I can escape to the river. They will lose me in the water." Aaron's eyes met hers. Weak but shining. "Go. Now. Do not look back." Tears fell from her eyes as she pressed her forehead to his. For a moment, time felt still. The ruins, the fire, the machines all faded. Only the bond between them remained. "I will carry your spirit," she whispered. And then, with a broken heart but unshaken promise, Myra left. She moved swiftly through the ruins, slipping past the smoke and shadows, reaching the river just as the machines closed in. She plunged into the cold water, letting the current pull her away. Behind her, the ruins shook with the thunder of machines. Aaron lay in the shelter, the blanket over him. His eyes were half closed, but he smiled. For in his last moments, he knew he had not failed. A part of him lived on in Myra. Hours later, Myra pulled herself onto the riverbank, far from the colony ruins. She was alone, wet, and trembling, but alive. She looked at the rising sun, its light spreading across the broken land. For the first time in days, she let herself weep. She wept for Aaron, for the battles, for the ruins. But she also felt something new: hope. Aaron's words echoed in her mind, "If one human lives, the machines have not won." Myra rose to her feet. Her body was weary, but her spirit was strong. She would find others. She would carry the memory of Aaron, the soldier whose body had betrayed him but whose will had lit a fire inside her. The machines had taken much, but they had not taken her courage. As the sun climbed higher, Myra walked forward, leaving footprints in the dust. Each step was a promise. She would survive. She would fight. And one day, the machines would learn what Aaron had already known: humanity was more than flesh and bone. Humanity was spirit, and spirit could never be erased. And so, the girl who once only cared for a broken soldier now carried his flame into the future. The ruins were behind her, but hope was ahead.